Yes. Mhm. Okay, hey guys. Good morning. Let me just, I think we still have people coming in here, so. You will need your book, and you have a notebook handy that might be useful. Okay, so this week we are going, excuse me, we are going to do the graded timed writing for the prose analysis on Thursday, okay? We'll review that a little bit in class, or if you're Zooming, and Zoom Wednesday, all right? And we've got our college essay draft due for Thursday as well. If you, on Wednesday, we'll kind of go through the peer evaluation form for that. And on Thursday, I'll be assigning you partners, and that'll be a piece that you'll be submitting as well, okay? We can do that from distance pretty easily. And so today I just want to spend a few minutes talking about the stories we read. We are going to have a final writing that you may use any of these stories on. I think we still have someone coming in. Okay, but so you guys answered a bunch of questions on those 5 short stories, and if we can flip back, I'd like to kind of take a minute or two on each of those stories and then get to Speaking of Courage. And I think we'll hold off on notes maybe till Wednesday. So I am looking at page 111, if we're in the black textbook. Kale, you with me? You feel like reading the first paragraph of Stockings for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Henry Dobbins was a good man and a superb soldier, but sophistication was not his strong suit. The ironies went beyond him. In many ways, he was like America itself, big and strong, full of good intentions, a roll of fat jiggling at his belly, slow of foot but always plodding along, always there when needed him, a believer in the virtues of simplicity and directness and hard labor. Like his country too, Dobbins was drawn towards sentimentality.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So this was our first question. We have a kind of, I think it's supposed to be humorous, comparison between Henry Dobbins and America, and he sort of extends that. So what is he telling us about America here, or Henry Dobbins? How did you guys? I said if you broke that metaphor down, what did you get from it? Awkward silence ensues. So, well, Macy, tell me what you thought there.
Well, I mean, they're saying how like America itself is fairly large in like land mass as Dobbins is, and then even though he is moving slowly in Vietnam or whatever, he still is continuing on forward and not and like staying strong in his
Okay.
beliefs.
Yeah, that's good. It's kind of like a Wisconsin joke. I was watching. I don't know. We have Hulu, so I turned on the local news is Eau Claire, and they had a woman doing like a cooking little 5-minute cooking segment, and it was this pasta, and she put in like so many different kinds of cheeses. It was like 5 different Wisconsin brands of cheese, and I was like, well, this is kind of a typical Wisconsin stereotype. And I think that's you're right with Henry Dobbins, and that paragraph is almost, except for the last word about being sentimental, is almost disconnected from the rest of the story in a way. It's almost like its own little set piece. And then we have the thing about his girlfriend's pantyhose or whatever, the stockings, that gives the story this title. Hey, were you guys familiar with the term Dear John letter? How many people have heard that before? Okay, so a Dear John letter is, I suppose now it would be a text or a email or something, or a call, but it was a letter to a person in the military from their girlfriend telling them they were breaking up with them. And if you think about it, he said the average age of these people were 19 and 20. This is something that happens anyways frequently around that age, and I think that's part of the story, is his response to the Dear John letter. Otherwise, what would you say the theme of that story was? What is this story even doing in this book? How does it connect to anything? Freya, what'd you say for that one? I'm just going to call on people randomly here.
I kind of said that it draws back to the idea of the soldiers carrying things that not necessarily represent the things, but more the weight behind them, and he kind of loses the weight behind it and his girlfriend.
Okay, good. I would add, and I think some of you guys added about that, the superstition that in war, like lots of things, people get very superstitious, and everyone thinks that Henry Dobbins is never going to get hurt, and he doesn't. So that just the idea of this superstition sort of starts to take on a weight for itself as well. Lots of war movies have a character like this. Apocalypse Now, there's a guy, Captain Kilgore, that says something very similar. Okay, let's move on to church. Church is a weird little story that we had that one theme, or one passage that you had to respond to that's in the middle of the story. So I'll just read that little passage again. It was when Kiowa and Henry Dobbins are talking, and Kiowa says, I do like churches, the way it feels inside. It feels good when you just sit there like you're in a forest and everything's really quiet, except there's still this sound you can't hear. What did you see going on with church? Hannah, how about you take that one?
Well, I just said like it's just kind of representative of the safe space where you can go to kind of escape everything, because for the war it was where like life was calm and everything, but for him it also connected to this deeper sense of just finding calm and peace in the craziness of life.
I agree. I think that's a good answer, and I even think that maybe this story is kind of put in the middle of the book. It's a peace story in a way about finding, like you said, a safe space, or the concept of the physical space where I can go and feel something different. And that they don't feel good being in this pagoda, and he says we shouldn't be stopping here. This is like a sacred space. Is a piece of that as well. Okay, let's keep going. The Man I Killed. So we talked about why did he repeat this image? It's very graphic image of this dead Vietnamese soldier. How come it is repeated so many times throughout the course of the story? Grace, what did you have for that one?
I wrote that it's going through his mind over and over again, so the repetition creates the same effect for the reader.
Okay, everyone agree with that? So that's the second part of that question was Tim O'Brien is, what's his presence? He's sort of an absence in the story, even though he's a kind of a main character. And a lot of people said that his presence, he sort of becomes the reader, that this image of this dead soldier keeps staring at him. And so we have the point of view, the reader sort of has the point of view of Tim O'Brien, but he doesn't say anything in the story. He almost doesn't even appear in the story. And so it's an unusual move from the author's standpoint and point of view. And then we said that the last thing that Kiowa says to him is talk, sort of a command. Why does he say talk? Fiona, what'd you get out of that one?
I just said, so like, because he had all these emotions and thoughts inside his head, and so they didn't just stay inside of him, because if they did, eventually it would take a negative toll on him.
Okay, I agree. And I think that's what most people answered was that, and again, I think a theme throughout the book is this idea that telling your story is important, expressing yourself is important, and not just holding things in, as we will see shortly, right? Okay, this next story is Ambush. And I said there's kind of two ambushes. One is that they ambush this Vietnamese soldier sort of on a trail 20 years ago in Vietnam. What's the other ambush in this story? What did you guys say for two, having another ambush? Edward, do you remember answering that one? No, okay. Aubrey, how about you?
I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought the other ambush could kind of be like when his daughter asked him about if he had killed anyone in war, and he lied, but it kind of put him in like a sticky situation, I guess, and he was constantly kind of battling like the morality of the lie he told her.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think that's why the story is called Ambush, is that his daughter's question, did you ever kill anybody, is the ambush, as much as the actual one, or the one in the war. So it's sort of a literal and figurative ambush, so to speak. And I think that gets back to the, again, back to the things we carried, how this thing keeps coming back at him over time. Oh, by the way, back to the poem, The Man He Killed. We said the theme of that poem was that the soldier that you kill in many ways is just like you. And if you met in different circumstances, you might be friends. And I think that one of the themes that he's worried about, or that O'Brien is dealing with, is the theme that, okay, never mind, the theme that I think he feels like there's not much compassion for anyone but Americans from an American standpoint. And that Tim O'Brien, or that Henry Dobbins paragraph, I think there's a little piece of that in there that he's getting at. And I think by imagining the life and the traditions of who this Vietnamese soldier would be, and he imagines a guy that doesn't want to go to war, which many people would be in that position. He's trying to extend some sympathy towards the other side of the battle and take a more open view of that as well. And I think that's kind of an important aspect of that story. Okay, the last story is Style, and very short, sort of a disturbing piece. We have the girl who's dancing, and most people seem to say that she is doing some expression of horror or grief or just a physical response to having her, it sounds like, her family killed. And then Azar is making fun of it, and Henry Dobbins getting mad about that in that scene. And I think we see that for Henry Dobbins getting mad, I think he's starting to, again, that the soldiers are carrying the consequences of this. And another theme he has is that the consequences of war doesn't end. So for that girl, the war is going to continue. For the soldiers who were part of that, that they're going to be carrying that with them. And I just saw part of a documentary this weekend called The Hornet's Nest, which is about, it was filmed about, I think in 2011 in Afghanistan. And they have some statistics about, I think it was about 3 during the height of our presence there, about 3 children were killed per day that were just civilians that were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's an aspect of any war that all soldiers, I would think, and people who are connected with it feel the weight of that very clearly. Okay, so let's go to speaking of courage. You had some very good answers about that. We had some divergent answers, or some that may have been a little more precise. So Norman Bowker is in small town, Iowa. It's the 4th of July. He's driving around the lake as they get ready for fireworks to go off on a Sunday night in the summer. No, I guess, yeah, it would be summer. How did you see that setting as being significant? Why did he choose that, would you think? Ellie, what would you say about that one? And speaking of courage.
I'm gonna pull it up 1 second.
Or anyone, yeah, you got it. Sorry, we got dogs and cats running around here. Anybody take, why 4th of July and the fireworks show? How does that add to the story, or why do you think he picked that date to set this story? Well, let me take that one then. All right, it's a little quiet on Mondays. I just think, what are we celebrating? Our independence. It's also usually connected with military celebration or honoring people from the military, and the fireworks sometimes are almost a reminder of that, as they are in this story, and that this is supposed to be a day of national pride. And he's feeling obviously ambivalent about his experience that he just got back from. And of course, in many wars, but Vietnam famously, that lots of soldiers did not feel welcomed when they got back, or certainly didn't feel like celebrating something like this. Okay. 3 things. I said that as he drives around the lake 12 times, he sees some things. And I think we could assign symbolic value to almost anything he sees, and there was more than 3 things that he saw. What was something that you remember him seeing as he drove around the lake, and what value did you see in that thing? Maren, you got one for me there.
I was talking, but I was muted. Sorry. Well, he saw the girl that he had a past relationship with, and then he saw the boys who were, they were carrying like canteens, and they were dressed, and I think they had boots and stuff on, and looking like they were. Or I interpreted it as that they were acting like soldiers.
Yeah, they have toy
Yeah.
rifles.
Yeah. And also just like the water itself, how that kept him recalling past events too.
Okay. Yeah, so let's hit those. So I'll kind of take some of what you guys said. So his old girlfriend, Sally Kramer, now Sally Gustafson, lots of people said something about that. Maybe he feels like his life would be different had he not gone to the war, that people moved on. He didn't. She's married, and now he's kind of feeling like maybe he missed some sort of window there. And also just that when he sees her on a previous trip, he almost talks to her, then doesn't, and then takes off. The soldiers, I think most people said something about how this is something little boys and some little girls do, is play war or pretend to be soldiers. And I think a little bit to that, back to that Dulce et Decorum Est poem, when that there's a lost innocence here, and having gone through the experience of an actual war, how watching some kid pretend to be a soldier might have a very different feel. Another thing people talked about was there's a guy with a stalled motorboat in the middle of the lake, and people mentioned how he's sort of like the guy with the stalled boat, that he seems to be stuck. He's driving in circles just as the boat might be stalled out in the lake. And then a lot of people talked about sort of two different things, that the lake was cut in half in nice homes on one side, less expensive on the other side. It was dark and light, and how he feels maybe sort of divided as a personality. Okay. Speaking of Courage is the title. How would you say that's an ironic title, or how is it a serious title? Hannah, why don't you take that one?
Well, I said it was kind of ironic for him because he couldn't speak about his courage, so he kept trying to go through the story and he couldn't do it. And then the other thing is he didn't think he was courageous enough. So like, speaking of courage, he didn't think he could do it.
Okay, exactly. So he really doesn't speak in the story. The only actual speaking he has imaginary conversations, but is when he speaks through the drive-through thing at the A&W. But other than that, he doesn't speak. He doesn't speak to his dad. He doesn't speak to Sally. So again, back to our previous comment about the need to tell your stories and that command to talk at the end of The Man I Killed. We have a character here who is not speaking, okay, and maybe is incapable of getting his story out, all right? The first line of the story is he was back from the war and there was nothing to do, something like that. Good, okay. We have the death of Kiowa, which is going to come up in the next few stories as well. They're in this mud/crap field at night, and they get hit with some mortar fire and they lose Kiowa. And this has a powerful effect on Norman Bowker. And he feels, as Hannah said, that he wasn't courageous enough. And then he talks about how sometimes he had courage and sometimes he only had so much, and that he felt that he didn't have it here. One of the key images I think we talked about was the juxtaposition of the mortars going off, that he's imagining the mortars the night Kiowa got killed, and here's the 4th of July celebration. And I think that using those two images of explosions, that he has given us this flip side. So as this thing is starting to go off in his hometown, the fireworks show, he's thinking back to a very different event with similar imagery. The last part of the story is kind of weird. Let's take a look at that last paragraph. Okay. He pulled into Sunset Park and stopped in the shadow of a picnic shelter. After a time, he got out, walked down to the beach, and waded into the lake without undressing. The water felt warm against his skin. He put his head under. He opened his lips very slightly for the taste. Then he stood up and folded his arm and watched the fireworks. for a small town, he decided it was a pretty good show. Okay, weird scene. If you picture that, a guy walking into the lake fully dressed and then getting out of there. Sophia, what did you think about that?
Well, for one, it's concerning, and two, to me, it really kind of came full circle. This story in general talked a lot about drowning. In the beginning, they talked about, hold on.
His friend Max drowns in the lake, yeah.
His friend Max drowned in the lake, and then Kiowa, he kind of,
Mhm, yep.
around in that mud, and then for him to, walk in that lake, kind of, and then just pull out, just a display of not choosing when to have courage.
Yeah, good. Elaine, would you want to add anything to that?
No, it's pretty much what I said too.
Okay, so some people saw, you guys had some different answers. Some people saw it as an act of purification, sort of like washing the mud, these, like he's trying to cleanse himself of his memory in that way. Some people saw it identifying with like potentially drowning himself or joining in with Max in a way. And we had a couple different answers there. I guess I've always kind of read it as that it is sort of a purification. However, I agree with Sophia that it is a pretty odd act. And if we've read Notes, okay, the first line of Notes is that Norman Bowker commits suicide later. And so I think that this story is the portrait of a person who is very stuck and very conflicted and very unable to get past their experiences. I think the numbers, it's something crazy. I think 58,000 soldiers were killed in Vietnam and over 100,000 committed suicide in the years afterwards. So this was a real thing, and it's something that's been going on for as long as there was been wars. But okay, I think that's a well-written story in terms of the way it's pieced together and trying to give us that portrait of the person who is unable to communicate. I'm going to leave it at that for today. And I think, so what I'm going to ask you guys to do pretty much, you've got a week essentially to read the rest of the book, but for Wednesday, if you can just read the next two stories. So in the field, well, Notes, we'll touch briefly on Notes in there. Let me take a look at it. Yeah, in the field in good form, and good form is just a 2-page story. So there's at the end of Notes, he says, that part of the story was my own. And there's an unnamed soldier that is a prominent part in the field. And I think that it's supposed to be Tim O'Brien, but I'm not positive. I'll see what you guys think when you read it. So if you read those two for Wednesday, and then for the following Monday, I'm going to ask you to finish reading the book. So if you want to get ahead and continue reading, you can go for that. That's it. Okay. I think we're good for, you got the college essay that we're working on. And Wednesday we'll do sort of a review and some tests or some notes and say, hey, what do you want to have in front of you when you do the timed writing on Thursday? So that's it. Good job on keeping up with stuff, and we'll see you on Wednesday.